well, we have to figure out what caused the congestion in the first place. Because if you're doing flush after flush, you're getting this temporary high. And like, mind you, it is really depleting on the system. You're not just flushing out, a lot of toxins, you're also flushing out a lot of essential minerals. You're flushing out so many toxins at a time that it's really making an impact on your adrenals, your nervous system. It can irritate the kidneys, the liver. And so, yeah, it's like, people in the detox world think that you can just pull stuff from the body. I did it too. I ended up in the hospital after doing that.
Eva Hooft, thank you for joining me on the Mindful Movement podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was checking out your stuff on your website, and honestly, it hits home for me. The idea of detox and healing, very near and dear to my heart. I went through quite the journey myself, and I don't know, maybe I'm still on it a little bit, and maybe I could learn something today that might help me wherever I'm at. But you seem to be also, you have gone through something very significant, and from the wound comes the gift. It seems like you found a way to help others, and I think that's just such a natural story that arises in some people's lives, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, not an easy one, but it definitely, I always like to tell people like the journey is the destination, and it's really been a beautiful one to kind of overcome. I mean, there's always more to do, and I'm sure that you can relate to this as well, especially with detoxification, with the world we live in. There's always more to detox. So I'm sure you'll take some gems away today. I would hope. But yeah.
So I assume you went through some real pain and figured it out on your own. That's the common story. Like, people are generally just failed by the allopathic system, as great as it can be in certain situations. It seems like some of these chronic, especially when there's like gut related, just don't feel good, don't know why, doesn't show up on a test, and you have to like dive in on your own and figure it out. Is that kind of how it played out?
Yeah, for sure. Like, that's the story to a T.
What specifically were you dealing with?
I feel like the better question is, what have I not dealt with? I think
Okay.
it's one of those. Yeah, I was born, with like a lot of different issues already from like a young age, like having a lot of eczema and food intolerances, and just like having depression at a young age. And I was diagnosed. It's like I don't even remember my list of diagnoses. Like chronic fatigue, and like I would have insomnia at like age 12, 13, would sleep like 2 hours a night, just like a lot of different, things. And I was really, really grateful to have parents who were pretty holistic. So I was, brought to like homeopathic people and like psychics when I was really young, which is really
Wow.
cool. But even the holistic people couldn't really figure it out. So it was very much a journey of at a young age, like really just being out on my own. And I think like I got really, really sick when I was 14. I got diagnosed with chronic CMV, which is a viral activation, so they say. And I ended up being bedridden for really 2 years, after which, once I finally recovered and my immune system got a little bit stronger, I also got diagnosed with anemia and ended up having a ferritin level of like, I think it was 3. And that's like, I mean, really, really disastrously low. So I ended up being bedridden again for another year. So I ended up like missing out, a couple years of my high school and having to redo a lot of that. And it really quickly spiraled me into like suicidal ideation, depression. Like, I just felt, alone, couldn't figure out my health issues at a very young age. And from there, like once I started feeling better, which took a few years, I ended up rolling into the modeling industry, which I was in for about 10 years. And that really, really started off, my eating disorder, like other types of depression, more so like, I mean, everyone knows how toxic the modeling industry is. So like constant body image things, like comparison, wanting to lose weight quickly. And so by my agents, I was put on all these different diets to try to, lose weight as fast as I could from the keto diet. And then I went to like raw vegan and just cycled way through quickly to these diets. And that really ended up with me having insane gut issues, ended up going to the doctors, just got told I had IBS and I should eat more, whole grain bread and cheese. And like, as they tell you, especially in Holland, which is
If
where I'm
only it
from.
was that easy.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, okay, great. I, definitely didn't even try that. I was like, okay, this is advice that's outdated very, very, very many years. And yeah, from there kind of was pushed into figuring it out on my own, as I'm sure it sounds like many of other practitioners and other people have to do these days. And I went through all the more conventional approaches, the holistic routes, all the way from like, oh, I have to do a SIBO protocol and maybe antibiotics will just kill it off, and maybe going on all the gut healing supplements will do it, or maybe a medical medium cleanse. And I'm going to do, all sorts of diets and cleanses. And there was, of course, temporary relief. I feel like everyone always will feel better for like a month or so, and then you're right back where you started. And that was my journey for about 6 or 7 years. And I got so fed up with it and just kept kind of searching and going. And then I stumbled upon detoxification. And I remember kind of going into this, and I got introduced to it mostly through the lens of liver flushing and mucoid plaque removal. And at the time, I was like, what are these things? What are these words even? And it blew my mind, first of all, that none of the holistic practitioners that were out there were talking about these things. Liver congestion has a huge correlation to a lot of our gut issues, and specifically regulating microbial growth, right? Like regulating candida and all these things.
Wait,
I had
can we spend some time on there for a bit? So you said mucoid plaque and liver flushing, and I have questions about all that. Were you just saying that the liver plays a role in managing the microbial stuff too?
Yeah, huge, huge. So bile, which is obviously an essential digestive fluid, it is kind of like the regulatory fluids of your microbiome. So if your liver gets congested, if it's blocked up, then the microbes in your gut kind of can just go haywire. There's really nothing that kind of like regulates them essentially. And this is, we can't even go into liver congestion. There's so much. I mean, I have so many different things to say about that because, of course, like medications, hormonal birth control, but even things like hypothyroidism and hormonal issues can basically prevent proper bile acid production. So there's so many different reasons why we live in a day and age that our livers are really congested. And the reason why I found it so like mind blowing on my path is because when I started getting into liver flushes, that was the first time I actually saw relief from my chronic SIBO symptoms, right? Candida, like all of these things that I had been trying to attack as functional medicine loves to do, and even natural medicine. And I started realizing like, okay, this is definitely not the way to go. So yeah, like liver congestion and microbial balance has like they go hand in hand. So from there, I kind of went overboard, as I'm sure many people will do. And I
Actually,
was like,
let's spend a little more time on that.
yeah,
So,
yeah, great.
so from what I understand, bile, among other things, I know it plays a role in like digesting fat, and but yeah, it's like detergent for the guts essentially, and it should have like a slippery viscosity like dish soap does in a
Hmm.
way, and for multiple reasons it could get sluggish. I think elevated estrogen is one of the things that can do that, which I think a lot of people are walking around with due to a myriad of reasons. But also from what I understand, when we are getting rid of toxins, we're using liver pathways to conjugate to make toxins water soluble or more water soluble, so or maybe it's the other way around. Yeah, water soluble so that they could go out and be excreted through the stool or the urine. But from what I don't know if this is 100% true, but I guess bile in itself is very both nutritionally expensive to make and metabolically expensive to make. So the inner wisdom has figured out a way to spare it by recirculating it and saving it,
Hmm.
which in theory is great. But in our environment, for a lot of people, there's so much toxins in that when you're recirculating the majority of it, you're like retoxifying yourself constantly. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah. So, in my understanding, I mean, it is absolutely true that we need to recirculate some of our bile. That said, with a lot of people having some level of constipation where they don't have adequate bowel drainage, then if that, let's say, the liver pushes out a bunch of toxins and then they actually sit in the colon for way too long, too much of that gets reabsorbed. So it is about just having really, really good bowel drainage first, which is why we tend to work right in the when it comes to drainage work, we always focus on the colon first, because if you're going to start to flush the liver, or you're going to start to dump more toxins from the liver, but you don't address the chronic constipation, which by the way can happen even if we're having 1 to 3 bowel movements a day. Like when we have obstructions in the bowels, stools can go around that. So you'll have people with chronic diarrhea or something like that actually have partial bowel obstruction that are chronically
Interesting.
constipated. Hmm.
So they won't think they are. I
Yeah.
remember I definitely went through constipation for a while when I was dealing with my issues, and I probably made things worse by like trying all the stuff and
Yeah.
pushing the liver before like the bottom of the funnel was
In
working.
there. Yep.
And the way I remember explaining it to my doc that the way I felt it was it's like I would go every day, but it's like on Wednesday instead of removing what I ate on Tuesday, I always felt like I was removing Monday's food. Like I was just always like
Yeah.
chronically one day behind or couldn't catch up. So, if you were going by number of stool a day, whatever, everything is fine. Like if you're filling out a form, it's like everything is fine. And what's the problem? But yeah, so you get all that stuff sitting there, and that's really common. And really any kind of stress you have, whether it's emotional or a microbial thing or whatever, is likely to slow down
Mhm.
motility
Yeah.
and make things worse, which I'm sure we'll get to, really speaks to the value in going upstream to the nervous system to really allow for things to really feel safe or in a place where it is even time to heal and get that signaling. Um, so the you said something else too. So as far as a liver flush, when you say liver flush, is that to flush bile? Is that to get something that's in the liver out of the liver? What does that refer to specifically?
Yeah. So liver flushes are, I don't know if you're familiar with Andreas Moritz's work. It is basically something that will trigger a massive bile release, but therefore also will trigger gallstone release. So it is something that is done periodically. I believe there's a story of like the history of it essentially being that when we were like way, way back ago, we would go these times where we would go without a lot of animal dietary fats. And then, a big animal would be hunted and we would feast on the organs and things like that. And that would actually allow our gallbladder to flush because there's this buildup of bile and then this massive release. Now, we don't do that anymore. We just eat fat all the time, which is great because we need to keep bile flowing because of, the toxicity these days. However, we don't ever eat like, we don't drink a whole cup of olive oil in one sitting, which no one should do, by the way, because it's extremely dangerous if you don't actually open the bile ducts previously. So the idea of a liver flush is that you abstain from fat for probably about a day, and then you take things that actually open the bile ducts, they soften the stones, and then you drink a large amount of oil combined with lemon juice or grapefruit juice, and that will flush the liver. So then you see releases of stones, but also, again, because it is so massive in microbial regulation, you can see people flush out entire candida cultures or a lot of parasites from the liver. So that was my journey when I just started. I had no idea that I had a liver infestation of liver flukes, which are a type of parasite, and I flushed out about 500 of them. It was actually pretty disturbing to see just from these liver flushes. So never touching any antiparasitic herbs. And
How
that was
big
really,
is a liver fluke that you're flushing out? What are we talking about here?
yeah, so liver flukes, I mean, they can be really small. They can be bigger when they're adult liver flukes. So it's really hard to say the size of them because they can come out like you can even see their egg sacs come out. That was like my case. And the crazy thing, and this is really when I went down the rabbit hole of heavy metals and parasites and the bioaccumulation of heavy metals, is that the ones that I was releasing were metallic. Like they were literally full of metals in the sense that they were fully shiny and metallic. And that was, yeah, super crazy. So
500. That's not all at once, I assume.
No, it was over a few flushes, but, like, typically people will see, massive stones and biliary sludge come out, and I had less of that, and it was more just like, when flukes come out, they look like these rolled up tomato skins or kind of like jelly, like, they can also look like jelly-like substances, like, they can be round, they can be more, like, flat, so they kinda look like snails.
This
Definitely
is
not
like, for
pleasing.
many people, this is probably so unappetizing, but if
Yeah,
you've been through this stuff, it's like interesting.
so
It's like,
interesting.
what did you release?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
let's share what we've seen in the toilet. Um, it's a detox culture.
Yep.
So I've never done one of those, but I have, I feel like, had like bile dumps, if you will, where there was like a tipping point. It's interesting. I've never heard it, Ava, in the like ancestral context of that would naturally happen, that you would build up a pressure by not having fat. Because I guess when you eat fat, there's an enzymatic signal or something to, for the, let me get this straight, for the gallbladder to contract to squeeze the bile out. So the liver makes the bile, the gallbladder stores it, and then the digestion of fat signals it to squirt out to help you digest the fat. I think so. So naturally, you would have this ebb and flow of your caloric intake and the makeup of it. So you would have periodic periods where you wouldn't have
Mhm.
it, and then you would have a surge because you hit the jackpot, got the animal or whatever, and they probably valued fat, so you'd really go after that and probably have a big dose of it. Um, but what would happen? So, like you said, you have to kind of prepare by opening things up. Like, how would that fit in that, like, thousands of years ago? Or
Yeah, great question. I mean, to be fully honest, this is just kind of like the anecdotal story that is going around in the detox industry. So
okay, fair enough.
I have no idea how that actually works. It just was kind of like, okay, this makes sense. Like, I think the reality of it is that way back then, the livers probably weren't as congested from that, so it was safe to eat, a large amount of fat. Like, I know people that actually will just eat like a massive steak and will see some gallstone releases. So it is a natural process that happens. I just think that if we haven't done that for 20, 30 years and there's a lot of liver congestion, it's probably not medically safe to do so because stones can get stuck. So I like where my brain would go is like they probably just because they were so used to doing that all the time, that's probably was a lot safer back then because we actually wouldn't congeal that amount of bile and like have these massive cholesterol stones. Whereas right now, like I've had clients that did their first flush and like they released stones the size of a golf ball. Well, that doesn't just go through normal bile ducts. So you have to actually work with like diluting the bile ducts and softening the stones to not have this amount of like pressure get stuck in the liver and gallbladder.
And the gallstones are made of cholesterol?
Yeah, I think it's cholesterol, bilirubin, like obviously toxins and things like that, but it's mainly cholesterol, which is why when they soften, I mean, eventually they can calcify, which is at that point that you can see them on ultrasound. So someone who is scheduled for a gallbladder removal at that point, they are very, very late in that process. So the way that Western medicine looks at this is like, oh, we can't see them on the ultrasound because they're not calcified yet, so you don't have gallstones. And I can definitely attest for the complete opposite because every single one of my clients has released like hundreds of stones, whether they were small, whether they're big. And the thing is with the liver, because it's such a big organ and it has so many bile ducts, is that some of the congestion is going to be a lot deeper. So maybe the first three, four flushes, you're flushing out more of that like more of like the sludge and like a lot of toxicity. So it will feel like really acid. You'll still feel really hungover when you're releasing it. However, when you get to like the deep congestion, that's where the bigger stones are. Yeah, and that process looks different for everyone. I know in the liver flushing community, there's people that have done 70, 100, 300
Wow.
flushes. I personally, I'm the complete opposite of that. I think that if you have to do that many flushes, there's clearly a reason that your bile is becoming stagnant, and we have to figure out what that reason is. And for a lot of people, that's like mineral imbalances, heavy metals, things like that. So actually dealing with that can basically give the body the adequate nutrients to properly create the right bile salts.
I heard a theory. I'd like to get your take that when people do those flushes, so you abstain from fat. I think you take things like malic acid or something to like soften up apple juice or
Mhm,
something,
mhm.
and then you have that big dose. And I've heard people take like Epsom salt or things that like just make you go and release. And I guess they're just generally relaxant to the system. But I heard that some people think that it's all that fat and the oil you have just coagulating and you're just passing it through. And it's not necessarily old stuff that was in you, but that the flush itself is creating that. Is that possible? Or have you heard that at all?
Gone down that rabbit hole. That was kind of where I started. First of all, after going through my own releases, I just knew it wouldn't be possible. So the method that I use is from this company called Zen Cleanse, and they actually don't use Epsom salts or things like that. They just use natural apple enzymes. It's a much gentler process. So
What was it called again?
Zen Cleanse,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, great products overall. And when using their products, you're not taking any of the Epsom salts and things like that. And when I'm seeing, like the wide variety of what people are releasing, it's like your body can't create that much. It can't coagulate like a golf-sized
Gotcha.
ball, like almost calcified stone. I'm like, I don't know,
What
what
do you
brought.
mean when you see it? Isn't it funny? Like everybody shares, like, look what I produced.
Oh, yeah, totally. Everyone shares it. I'll be eating and just, watching client results and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't bother me."
Yeah, I was in that phase. I mean, I remember being in a rough place and I was trying a lot of detox things um and I was on like a Facebook group about detox and like it was always like picture and comments. Like people would say something, ask a question, and then there was like a rule in the Facebook group that you don't put it in the post, you put it in the comments for people that don't want to see. But people would share like toilet images
Oh,
on
yeah.
the regular, just totally like normal behavior, and people would find value in it. You know, it helps people like connect the dots, and that leads me to another question. So, you mentioned, well, one, what did you feel like what do you experience after a productive liver flush? Do you
Mm.
feel like the lights turn on?
Yeah, I mean, again, this kind of comes to, I mean, this was like the start of my detox journey, and this is like when I went so deep into that and just thought liver flushing was going to heal all my issues and going down that route. And there's a lot of temporary relief for sure, but I think what's really important is kind of that point that I brought up after around, well, we have to figure out what caused the congestion in the first place. Because if you're doing flush after flush, you're getting this temporary high. And like, mind you, it is really depleting on the system. You're not just flushing out, a lot of toxins, you're also flushing out a lot of essential minerals. You're flushing out, so many toxins at a time that it's really making an impact on your adrenals, your nervous system. It can irritate the kidneys, the liver. And so, yeah, it's like, people in the detox world think that you can just pull stuff from the body. I did it too. I ended up in the hospital after doing that. Yep. And I was like, maybe the more that I'll pull, the faster it's gonna leave my body. And that's really like when, the nervous system piece came in, the re-nourishing, remineralizing, all of that side of my journey. But at the time, it was giving me a great sense of relief. Like there were flushes where I would just kind of move more congestion than release it. So like afterwards, you feel a little better, but nothing major. And then you have like a massive stone release, and I'm like, it's like, this is crazy, like this is amazing. And I think that a lot of people just get really, really addicted to the high of cleansing, of detoxing, of all those things. But long term, it's like energy in is energy out. Like you can't just keep taking from a system and assume that like if you're just going to keep cleansing that it will magically regenerate itself. Like that's just not how it works. And yeah, a lot of my clients will find me after they've done a lot of detox work and have either ended up in hospital or have ended up with a nervous system crash or now have amenorrhea or other, thyroid issues, and are like, okay, I think I'm ready to actually nourish myself, which is one thing that I think just as a society, we don't really know what nourishment actually means. So, yeah.
For sure, yeah. What's mucoid plaque? Ava?
A mucoid plaque. It was so funny. I was once on a podcast and he was like, "We can't call it mucoid plaque because the podcast will get censored." And I was like,
What?
"Oh,
Is
right."
that a controversial thing? Mucoid
It
plaque?
is. It is
Really?
apparently. Yeah. So mucoid plaque, again, in my understanding, not going to make any medical claims here, but from what I've experienced and researched and seen, it is a buildup of mucus, right? Like our bodies produce mucus all the time. There's